Subscribe to Stories, click the like button, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable story. The sound of splintering would echoed across the yard that quiet Sunday morning. Emily stood staring at the half-collapsed fence between her property and the neighbors. The last storm had finally done it in. A deep sigh escaped her lips. She couldn't afford another unexpected repair. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and muttered, "Just perfect." That's when she noticed Mark, her neighbor from next door, leaning on his porch railing, coffee mug in hand. He gave a friendly wave and walked over, boots crunching on the gravel. But what if that simple act of kindness hid a deeper mystery lurking in the shadows of their shared fence? "Looks like that old fence finally gave up," Mark said with an easy smile. His voice had that calm tone that made people instantly comfortable. Emily had only spoken to him a few times since moving in 2 months ago. He mostly kept to himself, always working on some project in his garage. "Yeah," she replied, glancing at the broken planks. "I was hoping it would last through the season." Mark studied the fence, then looked back at her. "I've got tools. If you want, I can help fix it. It won't take long." Emily hesitated. She barely knew him, and she wasn't the type to accept favors easily. But there was something genuine in the way he offered. No pressure, just kindness. "You'd really do that?" "Of course," he said. "Neighbors should look out for each other." They spent the next hour clearing the damaged boards. Mark worked methodically, showing her how to measure and align each plank. Emily found herself relaxing, even laughing a few times at his quiet jokes. By noon, they were sitting on the porch steps, sharing lemonade. The air was warm, and for the first time since moving in, the place didn't feel quite so lonely. "So, what brought you here?" Mark asked, breaking the silence. Emily smiled faintly. "A fresh start, I guess. After my divorce, I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere to think." He nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I get that. Quiet helps. Gives you room to breathe." There was a pause long enough for her to notice the sadness in his eyes. "What about you?" she asked softly. "You live alone?" He looked out toward the hills behind their street. "Used to live here with my wife. She passed away last year. Cancer." The way he said it, calm, almost practiced, made her chest tighten. "I'm so sorry, Mark." He managed a small smile. "Thanks. It's been rough, but fixing things helps. Keeps my hands busy. Keeps my mind from wandering too much." The wind rustled through the trees. For a moment, neither spoke. There was something unspoken between them, an understanding that both had lost something precious and were trying to piece their lives back together. As the sun started to dip behind the rooftops, Mark gathered his tools. "I'll bring some new planks tomorrow. Shouldn't take more than a day to finish." Emily nodded. "You don't have to." "I know," he said gently. "But I want to." When he left, she stood at the porch railing, watching him disappear into his yard. She felt a strange warmth, something between gratitude and curiosity. She couldn't quite explain it, but part of her looked forward to seeing him again. That night, she sat by her window, staring at the half-fixed fence. It looked better already. But it wasn't just the wood that had started to mend. Something inside her, long neglected, felt like it was healing too. Still, one question lingered in her mind as she turned off the light. Why had Mark been so quick to help? The next day brought more than just new planks. It unveiled a secret that would change everything. The next morning, Emily woke to the soft hum of a truck engine outside. When she peeked through the blinds, she saw Mark unloading wooden planks from the back of his old blue pickup. He worked quietly, focused as sunlight glinted off the rim of his glasses. Emily slipped on a light sweater and stepped outside. "You're early," she said, smiling. "Couldn't sleep," Mark replied, grinning. "Figured I'd get started before it got too hot." She walked closer, offering 2 cups of coffee. "Then you definitely need this." He accepted one with a nod. "Thanks, Emily. You didn't have to. After all your help, I think I did." They started working side by side again, the rhythm of sawing and hammering filling the space between them. Every now and then, Mark would glance over, making sure she wasn't struggling with the tools. She noticed he never once took credit or acted like she couldn't do it. He just quietly guided her, letting her learn. Hours passed easily. By early afternoon, the fence stood taller, straighter than before. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real, something they'd built together. Emily stood back, brushing sawdust from her hands. It looked strong. Mark smiled, his voice low. It is. The way he said it made her heart skip a beat. She wasn't sure if he meant the fence or something else entirely. After they cleaned up, they sat under the old maple tree between their yards. The leaves rustled overhead, scattering bits of sunlight across the grass. Mark sipped the rest of his coffee and said, "You remind me a little of my wife." Emily looked at him surprised. Really? How? She had that same determination. Even when life knocked her down, she'd stand up, dust off, and get back to it. You've got that same fire. Her throat tightened. That's kind of you to say. He nodded slowly, looking out at the fence. She used to sit out here in the evenings watching the sunset. Said it made her feel grounded. They both fell silent for a moment. Emily didn't want to pry, but she could sense there was more behind his calm exterior. Grief still lingering in quiet corners of his heart. When she finally spoke, her tone was gentle. "You must miss her a lot." Mark took a deep breath. "Every day, but I'm learning to live with the quiet. Some days it even feels peaceful again." Emily smiled softly. "That's brave." He looked at her, then really looked at her as if searching for something in her eyes. "You're brave too, Emily. More than you realize." The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of rain. Thunder rolled in the distance. Mark stood and said, "Looks like a storm's coming. Let me help you cover the tools before it hits." They hurried to secure everything, laughing as the first few drops started to fall. Within minutes, rain poured down in thick sheets, soaking them both as they ran for shelter under her porch. Breathless, dripping, they stood inches apart, both trying not to laugh. "Guess we didn't make it in time," she said, brushing her hair back. "Nope," he chuckled. "But I've been through worse." The rain drummed against the roof, steady and soothing. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt warm, not awkward. Emily noticed how his shoulders relaxed near her, how his guard seemed to lower in small, quiet ways, but then his smile faded slightly. He looked toward the fence again. "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course." He hesitated, his voice barely above the rain. "When you moved here, did you ever feel like someone was watching you?" Her breath caught. "Watching me?" He nodded. "I don't mean in a bad way necessarily, just sometimes I notice things. Lights turning on late at night. Footsteps by the fence line." Emily frowned. "I thought that was just raccoons." Mark's expression didn't change. "Maybe, but I've seen someone out there a few times. Not close enough to make out who." The rain seemed to grow louder as the words sank in. Emily tried to laugh it off, but a chill ran through her despite the warm air. "You're saying someone's been near my yard?" He nodded once slowly. "Yeah, and I think it's the same person who's been leaving footprints near mine." Emily's pulse quickened. The comfort of the afternoon was suddenly replaced by unease. Mark's voice was steady, but his eyes had changed, watchful, cautious. "Don't worry, I'll keep an eye out tonight. Just keep your doors locked, okay?" She nodded, unable to find her voice. As he stepped off the porch and into the fading rain, Emily stood frozen, her mind racing. She'd come here for peace, for quiet. But now that quiet didn't feel safe anymore. That night, the wind carried a strange stillness. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Emily sat by her window, a lamp glowing softly beside her, staring at the fence they had built just hours ago. Mark's words echoed in her mind. "I've seen someone out there a few times." She wanted to believe it was nothing, just animals or maybe shadows. But something about his tone had felt too real. At around 10 o'clock, she turned off the lights and peeked through the blinds. The backyard was cloaked in darkness, except for the faint outline of the fence under the moonlight. Nothing moved. She forced herself to go to bed, but sleep wouldn't come easily. Every creak of the floorboards, every brush of wind against the siding made her sit up, listening. Just after midnight, she heard it. Soft, crunching sounds. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Her heart pounded as she crept to the window again. Someone was out there, a tall shape near the back of the yard, standing close to the new section of the fence. The figure moved quickly, disappearing behind the trees before she could make out a face. Emily's breath shook. She grabbed her phone and typed a message to Mark. "There's someone outside." Within 2 minutes, she saw his porch light flick on. Then his door opened. Mark stepped out holding a flashlight. He scanned the yard carefully, his beam cutting across the wet grass and over the fence. No one, just the sound of the wind again. He turned and waved toward her window, mouthing, "It's clear." Emily opened the door, her hands trembling. "Mark, I swear I saw someone." "I believe you," he said softly. "Stay inside. I'll check around the back." He disappeared into the dark, flashlight sweeping left and right. Emily stood at the doorway, gripping the handle so tightly her knuckles turned white. A few minutes later, he returned. "There are fresh footprints near the trees." "You weren't imagining it." Her chest tightened. "Who would do that?" "Why?" "I don't know," he said, glancing toward the fence again. "But they weren't trying to steal anything. It's like they were just watching." The words sent a chill through her. "What should we do?" "I'll call a friend of mine at the sheriff's office," he said. "We'll get a patrol to drive by for a few nights. In the meantime, I'll stay alert." Emily nodded slowly, but her mind was racing. "Why my yard?" she thought. "Why no?" They stood together in silence for a moment. The only sound the soft dripping of water from the roof. Finally, Mark spoke again. "I'll set up a motion light near the fence tomorrow. It'll scare off whoever it is." "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without your help." He gave her a reassuring look. "You're not alone, Emily." "Not anymore." When he left, she locked the doors and sat on the couch, wrapping a blanket around herself. For hours, she listened, waiting for another sound. But the night stayed quiet. By morning, sunlight spilled across the living room, making everything seem smaller and safer than it had hours earlier. Mark showed up just after breakfast with a motion sensor and a small camera. As he worked, she brought him coffee. "You really don't have to do all this." He smiled faintly. "I know, but I want to make sure you feel safe here." Something about the way he said it made her eyes sting. She didn't know if it was gratitude or something deeper that tugged at her heart. When the camera was up, he tested it and nodded. "This should record anyone who comes near the fence." That evening, they reviewed the footage together. Nothing unusual, just a few birds and a cat passing through. Emily laughed nervously. Maybe it really was just an animal. Mark didn't answer right away. He pointed to the corner of the screen. "Wait there." In the faint light, a shape appeared at the edge of the yard. A person barely visible standing still, watching the house. Emily's heart dropped. "That's them." Mark leaned closer, frowning. "It's too dark to see a face, but whoever that is, they were here around 2 o'clock in the morning." He turned to her, voice steady but firm. "Keep your lights on tonight, and if you see anything again, call me first. Don't go outside, no matter what." She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. "Okay." That night, Emily double-checked every lock and curtain before going to bed. But sleep was still a stranger. Around 3, her phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "I saw movement near your fence again. Stay where you are." Her stomach turned cold. She moved to the window, heart racing. This time she saw the beam of Mark's flashlight outside. And behind it, for just a moment, a shadow slipping away toward the woods. The light vanished. Then silence. Emily waited, gripping her phone, until finally the screen lit up again. "I lost sight of them," Mark texted. "But I found something. We need to talk tomorrow." She stared at the message, her pulse pounding. What did he find? The morning felt heavier than usual. Clouds hung low, and even the birds seemed quiet. Emily waited by her porch, scanning the yard for any sign of Mark. He showed up around 9, carrying a small cloth bag and looking more serious than she'd ever seen him. "You found something last night," she said, her voice low. He nodded and set the bag down on the porch table. "Yeah, right near the fence line." Inside were 3 things. A torn piece of fabric, a rusted key, and a small silver locket. Emily leaned closer. "A locket?" Mark opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny photo, so faded she could barely make out the image. But it looked like a woman. "I found this half buried in the mud," he said. "It's old. Real old." She frowned. "You think it belongs to whoever's been coming around?" "Maybe," Mark said, studying it. "But there's something else. The key. It matches the kind used for old houses like yours." Her heart skipped. "What are you saying?" He hesitated. "I think whoever's been out there might have some connection to your house." Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. She'd bought the property from an older couple through an agent, and she'd never met the previous owner in person. "That doesn't make sense," she whispered. "Why no?" Mark didn't answer. "Instead," he said, "I did a little digging last night after you went inside. Checked some local records online. The house used to belong to a man named Thomas Hale. He passed away about 5 years ago." She nodded. "That's what I was told." Mark's expression darkened. He had a daughter. Name was Claire. She disappeared not long after he died. Emily's pulse quickened. Disappeared. Yeah, no record of her since. But here's the thing. Someone filed a maintenance request for this address under her name just last month. Emily's stomach turned. "That's impossible. I've been living here for 2 months." He met her eyes. "Exactly." The wind picked up, rattling the loose end of the tarp by the fence. The sound made both of them flinch. Mark closed the locket and said quietly, "I think whoever's been out there believes this is still her home." Emily's voice trembled. "Then what does she want from me?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I don't think she means to hurt you. Otherwise, she would have tried something already." They sat in silence for a long moment. Emily stared at the fence. The same fence that had brought them together, now standing as a line between safety and fear. Finally, she asked, "Do you think she'll come back?" Mark looked toward the trees. "Yes, people like that always come back to what they've lost." That night, Emily couldn't shake the unease. Every shadow outside felt alive. Mark insisted on keeping watch from his porch. Around midnight, a faint click echoed from the back gate. Emily froze. She looked through the curtain and saw movement near the fence. "Mark," she whispered into her phone. "She's here." He appeared seconds later, flashlight cutting through the darkness. The beam caught the figure of a woman, thin, her hair wild and tangled, her clothes worn. She didn't run this time. She just stood there, staring at the fence they'd built. Mark called out softly, "Claire." The woman lifted her head. Even from a distance, Emily could see the confusion on her face. "Who are you?" she said, voice trembling. "Why are you in my house?" Emily's heart broke a little at the way she said it. So lost, so fragile. Mark took a slow step forward. "This isn't your house anymore, Claire." "It's okay. We can help you." But Claire shook her head, backing away. "My father's still here. He told me to come home. He told me someone took it." Tears filled Emily's eyes. She could barely breathe. "Mark, what do we do?" Before he could answer, Claire turned and disappeared into the trees again. Mark ran after her, shouting her name, but the night swallowed his voice. Emily stood frozen by the porch, heart racing. She wanted to call out too, but her voice wouldn't come. Minutes later, Mark returned, breathless and pale. "She's gone. But I found something else." He held up a photo, old, folded, and damp. It showed a younger version of Claire standing beside her father in front of the very same fence. Emily stared at it, her throat tightening. "She built it with him," she whispered. Mark nodded. And now she came back to see it again. They looked at each other, both realizing the same thing. The fence wasn't what she wanted to reclaim. It was what she'd lost. But what neither of them knew yet was that Claire wasn't done. The next morning, the world looked calm again. Too calm. Dew clung to the grass, the sky soft and pale. But Emily didn't feel peace. Every quiet sound made her turn her head, expecting movement by the trees. Mark stopped by early, still wearing the same jacket from the night before. His eyes were tired, but his voice was steady. "I called the sheriff's office. They'll send someone this afternoon to check the woods. Maybe they'll find her." Emily nodded, clutching her coffee cup. She looked lost, like she didn't even know where she was. Mark sighed. Grief can do that. Sometimes it traps people in the past and they can't climb out. They sat on the porch together for a while, the fence stretching quietly between their yards. Emily kept staring at it, at the smooth new planks standing beside the weathered ones from years before. It felt symbolic now, like a bridge between what once was and what still could be. When the deputy arrived that afternoon, Mark walked him through what had happened. They searched the woods, but found nothing. No footprints, no trace of Claire. It was as if she had vanished again. By evening, the tension had softened. Emily cooked a simple dinner and invited Mark to stay. The two of them sat at her small kitchen table, the warm light casting soft shadows on the walls. "She'll be found," Emily said quietly, half to herself. "Someone will help her." Mark nodded. "Maybe, but even if she's gone for good, at least we know why she came. She wasn't trying to scare you, Emily. She just wanted to come home." Emily looked down at her plate, her voice barely above a whisper. "And we built that fence right where her memories still lived." Mark smiled faintly. "Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe she needed to see it rebuilt to know some things can still be made whole." They finished eating in thoughtful silence. When Mark got up to leave, he paused by the door. "I'll keep checking the camera for a few more nights, just in case." "Thank you, Mark," she said softly. "For everything." He met her eyes, and for a long moment neither spoke. Then he gave a small nod and walked out into the night. Later, as Emily washed the dishes, she glanced out the window one last time. The fence glowed faintly under the porch light. Something about it looked peaceful now, almost complete. But then she noticed it. A single flower, white and delicate, had been placed on one of the lower planks, right where Claire had stood the night before. Emily stepped outside, heart racing but calm. She knelt by the fence, touching the stem gently. It was fresh. She looked toward the woods, her breath misting in the cool air. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure, just a faint outline, watching from the trees. Then it was gone. Emily smiled faintly through the tears that had gathered in her eyes. "You can rest now, Claire," she whispered. Behind her, the porch light flickered softly, as if in answer. From that night on, the camera never caught another shadow. The patrols stopped. The nights grew quiet again. Sometimes, when the wind blew through the yard, the fence would creak just slightly, as if remembering the hands that built it, old and new. And every so often, Mark would stop by to share coffee on the porch. They rarely spoke about that night anymore. Some memories didn't need words, but both of them knew something had changed. The fence had started as a simple repair, a boundary between two yards. In the end, it became something else entirely, a reminder that even broken things once rebuilt with care could still connect hearts. Thank you for watching Stories. If this story touched you, hit the like button, subscribe to Stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story like this. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had a neighbor help you in a way that changed your life? Because sometimes the simplest acts reveal the deepest connections.